Hello and welcome to Holo-machine. This video is designed to be an introduction to the Holo-machine app and to guide you through the features. We're going to start by looking at the companion app that runs on a Surface tablet. When you first open the companion app, you land on the intro page. The first thing you need to look at is the IP address. Here you must enter the IP address of the HoloLens. Once you've done this, you can exit the app and then restart it to set the IP address in the system. You can check that this has worked by loading an example scene. If it has worked, you should see a basic stage layout with people on it, borders, legs and lights. If you're happy and you don't want to play around with this scene, you can remove the example scene to begin the rest of the journey. Let's start looking at the Create panel. The Create panel has some basic objects in it that will allow you to create rough scenes of your own imagination. The most versatile of these are the basic shapes, which you can create by placing the cursor from your headset on the floor. As well as basic cubes and spheres, you also have a doll. The doll is really useful to give you a sense of scale and to put a person on your stage. More advanced shapes give you options that you wouldn't have with normal primitive shapes. You have the ability to add lights, wash lights, moving lights and profile lights. Smoke can be used carefully. You can create low fog, full stage smoke and a smoke jet. However, smoke will drain the graphics power of your HoloLens, so try to use only one at a time and only in small scenes. Props, there are standard sets here just to get you going, and typical stage elements you'd expect to find in a normal show. Borders, legs, cloths, stairs, doors, truss and decking. Let's look at the transform panel. The idea of the transform panel is that you have to select an object first. Once you've created the object, you air tap on it to select it. I'll explain this later on when we get to the HoloLens app. Once it's selected, you can start to rotate it. As you can see, the cube at the bottom will turn to give you an idea of what should be happening in your HoloLens. You can move an X, Y and Z, and you can home these back to their original positions once you've finished. You also have the ability to scale an X, Y and Z, which will make the object bigger in each direction. And then you can home these again afterwards. You also have global homes for rotation and scale that will home everything equally. If you want to move things more carefully, you can move things by increments by clicking on Rotate X and Rotate Y and Rotate Z, or scale in uniform by clicking up here. When you're happy with the object, or if you decide you don't want it, you can destroy it by clicking here, or you could add gravity to it to make it fall and tumble to the floor. Once you've added gravity, it's quite hard to select it again, so we suggest only using this when you need to have a look at an object that might tumble to the floor, such as debris or something that's broken. In order to use all these controls, the object needs to be locked to your gaze. That means that wherever you look, the object will be following you around. This could be a distraction, in which case what you can do is load an anchor. The anchor will appear at the original object's creation point. It looks like a round disc, and when selected will give you the options to manipulate that object with using all of these tools, but without having it locked to your gaze. This is helpful if you want to manipulate an object while it's static on the scene. Now let's look at the materials panel. There are three components to the materials panel. The first is materials for the floor. By default it's a dark colour, which is there to help you be able to see your companion app running underneath the HoloLens environment. But you may wish to add lines, which will give you a sense of scale and distance, or choose rust, grass, metal, copper or stone. On the right are standard materials for your objects. As long as the object is selected, you can change its material. There are 30 materials to choose from here, but you'll notice that some of these materials have red boxes around the outside. These boxes indicate that there are more selections to choose from. In this case we have metal. If we choose the metal object, it will give you the option to cycle through a further 20 materials by clicking next or last. When you've chosen the one you like best, click X to return to the main menu. In total, there's over 100 materials to choose from. You can manipulate these further by using the colour picker. This can be used on a flat colour, or it can be used to manipulate, say, brick to make it a blue colour. Now let's look at the lighting panel. The lighting panel also has a colour picker. This, however, will not change the colour of the light, it will change the colour of the beam it produces. You can also manipulate the beam by increasing its intensity, by changing the width of the beam, and by changing the orientation of the entire light. This is here so that you can make a light spin upside down, so that it can spin on the floor or hang from the roof. Moving lights also have the option of pan and tilt, which works just like it does for real moving lights in the theatre world. You also have the option to add more lights just like you do on the crate panel, but they're also placed here to save you having to go back to the crate panel if you just want to work on lighting. Now let's look at the global controls. Global controls are there to move your entire scene to position it better into your space. For instance, you may have loaded up on stage and the set isn't quite lined up, so you may want to spin in the x-axis to line it up with your stage, or perhaps your stage has a slight rake or an incline, in which case you want to spin it to make it match the floor. This will help with real life situation. You can also push the entire set away from you and to the left and right by using this pad. Or if you wish to move by increments, you can use the same rotate commands that we saw on the transform panel. If you're working in a smaller environment, you can manipulate your scene so it's only a 25th of the size of its full scale version. Making it 1:25 will make it easier to see in a small room, but you can't then add new objects to it because the objects are still created at the original scale. If you're not happy with your scene at any point, you can click Reset Scene to go back to a completely clear stage. Let's now look at the full HoloLens app. And now we are looking at the actual HoloLens app, Holo-machine. When we're inside here, we can go to our Create panel, and wherever this cursor lands, you can see I'm looking around now and this white cursor is following me. When I decide I want to create an object, it will be created exactly where this cursor is and in the direction that the cursor is facing. So on the floor it will point up. So let's create a cube. There's our cube. And now I'll do an air tap to select it. I'll make sure the cursor is sitting on top of it. And then with my finger pointing up, I'll just do a little snap with my finger. And now the cube is locked to my gaze. Wherever I look, it follows me. If I want to move backwards and forwards with it, I have to physically walk around the space. I can do a simple air tap to deselect it. Select it again. And now I can select my transform tools. I can rotate it. I can scale it, and I can change its colour by using the colour picker. If I make it plain white, I can choose any of the other materials in my material library. Range of materials means that we can basically build anything we want. We can build objects on top of each other, spheres on top of spheres, cubes on top of spheres, and start adding materials to try to create all sorts of shapes and sizes. So if there is something that you want to build that doesn't exist in the library, it doesn't matter, we can build it for ourselves. Some of the materials are a little bit different. We have flames and space age holograms. They're just there for fun, but the rest of it's all quite useful. There's stones and rocks and gravel and grass and all the types of materials you'd expect to see on a stage set. Now you may have noticed that the objects are locked to my gaze. That's not always ideal. Sometimes you might want to work on an object while it's sitting still on stage. The way we do this is using an anchor. In the transform menu you can see the load anchor option. when you create an object, you have the option of choosing Load Anchor, and it creates the anchor at the base point of that object. We can now deselect it and leave it sitting where it was, and use the anchor to select it instead. And now that I select it, I can manipulate the sphere without it being locked to my gaze. So now I can scale it, I can rotate it, and then I can deselect the tag to tell the object that I've finished working on it. Let's look at other objects that use anchors. I can place a light, and you can see that in this case the light automatically creates an anchor. We can still select the light to move it around, but it might be easier to select the anchor to manipulate the object. I can select the anchor, and then I can operate the pan and tilt mechanism and the zoom of the beam. So that's the beam getting wider, change its colour, and I can pan and tilt the light just like you can on a real moving light. That's the end of this introduction tutorial. I'd like to thank you for choosing to use Holo-machine, and I hope you find it useful. I have great plans for Holo-machine and hope that it will be continuously improving. Please offer any suggestions or comments or feedback from me through my website jamessimpson3d.com.